Welcome to the lecture series of hydrogeology. So today we are going to talk about the pollution of groundwater, in which I'm going to discuss about the industrial sources and cause. Then we are going to discuss about the agricultural and miscellaneous waste, which will obviously contain the surface discharge or surface water, or urbanization also comes under this itself. But we have discussed it separately also. And then we are going to see the attenuation of pollution. How can we actually control this pollution? Because see, till now we are aware that the groundwater is going to have some pollutants. Now in how much quantity, that also we can decide, because we have discussed about the water quality standards. So we know what amount or what percentage is fine enough, and for what purpose we are using the water for, so that we can actually know that whether water is like okay for drinking, or whether it is okay for irrigation or for industry. So now what we know, that when pollutants are there, what are its sources? We have come across municipal source and uses. Now we are going to discuss specifically about the industrial and agricultural ones. So they're very easy, and then we'll discuss about how these can be curbed. Okay, so let's start the lecture. Okay, so now first I'll discuss about the industrial sources and causes. So the first one, what I'm going to discuss is about the liquid waste. Then we are going to discuss about the tank and pipeline leakage, because we all are aware of it. So you know there are some underground tanks and pipelines. Now what are they used for when I'm talking in industry? So they are used to store and obviously to transport fuel. Apart from fuel, what they transport? Chemicals. So at certain times they can fail, correct? Why? Because leaking can take place. Leakage can take place, and this becomes a common source of groundwater pollution. So whenever there are some petroleum products also which are present, especially when they come from gasoline stations or home fuel oil tanks, so they become the major culprit. Now, you know one thing, that when an immiscible liquid like oil, whenever it is going to leak, is going to mix, so obviously they will not mix, they are going to form an immiscible liquid in total, correct? And what will happen, they will start moving in downward direction until it hits the water table. Now what happened, that it forms a layer on the top of the water, and then they start spreading out with the flow of the groundwater. Okay, so leaking tanks that actually store the liquid radioactive waste, you just imagine the same scenario with that, they are going to be really harmful for the groundwater, correct? So actually they form very serious local groundwater pollution cause. Now what can be done in this case, that some special wells can be made, so that cone of depression can be made, which can actually contain the leak and then remove the contaminated water. But obviously this is a huge problem whenever such kind of spillage takes place, so it becomes very difficult to take the precautions, rather than if one would have prevented it at the earlier part, correct? So now this was about your pipeline leakage, or about the tank leakage. Now if I talk about the liquid waste, now this is very common in industries. So you know that industries, they use lot of water, because they use it for several purposes, like cooling, sanitation, or for manufacturing also. Manufacturing. And whenever they have been used, after that this used water, which is also known as wastewater, this become the pollutant. Okay, for example, I'm talking about the cooling water. So this is sometimes softened like to prevent the build up, and they can become polluted at later stage with the salts and the heat. So you see, when they're being used for a particular reason or for a particular cause, they're fine enough. But after that, when it is the waste water, when they have been used, so they'll obviously have some salts, they'll obviously have some heat in it because they have been heated up after performing some of the activities. So when these actually are deposited or are, dumped into the pits in the ponds, so pollutants, whatever are present in this water, they again, what will they do? They will seep down until they reach the water table, and they will form again the same kind of layer, and then they will start spreading out. So this is going to form the groundwater pollution. So sometimes what happens, this cooling water is put back underground also, as I have told you in the previous lectures also, how through shallow wells. Now they are done only when the water quality is still good, except for the added heat which has been provided to it. So in this case, what we have understood, that the hazardous or toxic industrial wastes are actually the contaminated water or the used water. Contaminated water or the used water, which we call as wastewater. So these are the two sources which we have talked about. Now let's talk about some more sources which are quite prominent, like mining activities and oil field brines. So you know that oil and gas production, whenever there is, in bulk, the oil and gas production, there result in large amount of wastewater, and this wastewater is known as brine. So it contains some substances like sodium, calcium, ammonia, boron, chloride also it contains. Then it also contains sulfate, and they have very high concentration of TDS, that is total dissolved solids. So earlier what used to happen in that in past, this brine was being discharged into streams, or in some evaporation ponds they used to get deposited, or they used to get dumped rather. And then what used to happen, that the infiltrating water from these depositional sites, they will again reach the groundwater. Okay, but while these methods are